I'm reading from Gethsemane, a sequence of poems about Jesus as viewed from a Jewish perspective, which I wrote specifically for this 50 Jewish Objects as a response to the fragment of the Gospel of John. And some are more Jewish perspectives than others, but I will start with a fairly neutral perspective called A Shroud in Turin. There was a man, they say, in Cairo, left his face burnt in a cloth. Not the sort of cross you'd make in biro, or the tale you'd leave in students' mouths, but his face, 2 eyes, a nose, some sort of pursed lip. How can you tell what a man kissed from the bits that burned frayed linnet crisp? But they see him. Those who believe say they feel him in those prints, left by a man in the shroud in a tomb and found near Turin in a skiff. But who he was, who can be sure? What he said we barely know. But he wiped his mouth on a cloth one Passover night, and 2,000 years on, the crumbs stick in the snow. This is from the different gospel, not the Gospel of John, and you'll know it by its title, Fishers of Men. He said to throw our nets and rods the other side of the boat. A little guy, only yay high, walking on the surf like he could float. He looked like his feet were the water, or something beneath held him up, like he was a son of the plaster, a flicking paint piece from the stars. So somebody let him walk on water that God first painted on the sand. He said we should throw our nets over. I said, what have we got left now? The fish. It was high season, but we hadn't caught diddly squat in a month. I figured with his toes feeling the water, he'd know what was what. But the deck was on fire with them. There was more fish than we could stand. The deck was washed with fins and scales, more than you'd raise with any man. We looked at him walk away, kicking the tide like it was sand. Where are you teaching? I called after him. You'll hear about it, he laughed. So we put down our nets and ran. The water closed over our heads like a storm. We never saw such fish again, not even when we went for bigger game. I often think of the child rather than the man. The child is often the subject of the paintings, and this is one of those pictures of the child. Remember you were loved. Remember you were loved, she says to the boy after his bath. I remember I'm loved, he says. Do you remember? I thought you said I don't remember. I remember I'm loved, he says, and stretches out both his arms, falls naked back on the bed. She throws the shroud filled with Canadian duck feathers over his bare chest. He disappears in a cloud of checkered spots. Nobody hears the mailed boots or the house catching alight. Nobody hears applause or calls for his crowned head. Only the steam from the bath rises, leaving a face in the pane, crying where tears trickle down the face of the child in the bed, smiling like nothing could go wrong, nothing ever shift in his head. This is one of the more Jewish ones, a Jewish perspective on a story in the Gospels. I heard somebody lecturing and referring casually to the moneylenders in the temple, the moneylenders being thrown out of the temple. And the moneylenders were there to serve a purpose. Because if you were coming from a long way away from Jerusalem to bring your offerings, your firstborn, it might just not be practical to drag a lamb down from near Lebanon. So you would sell it there, and you would take the money and you would buy or borrow at the temple in order to make your sacrifice. And that's the perspective of this poem, called Den of Thieves. We're doing a day's trade. You know how it goes. This one comes to buy a sheep. That one buys a goat. This one thinks he'll make things right with him if he just burns a dove. Now and then somebody comes without enough to buy what's in their heart. Or what a sheep costs way up there in Galilee is not what you get down here in the big smoke in the shade of the temple door. So we're lending and we're trading and we're taking sureties for gold, when all of a sudden I hear a wing take flight across the hall. Somebody in an argument, too much asked for some hank of wool. Somebody wants to charge a groat for a pennyworth of mutton for stew. But no. It's an evangelist with some newfangled idea, screaming about his father's house. Calls this a den of thieves. He turns the table over. Counting stones fall like rain. You could buy the temple and its night order of priests for the gold he sheds on the ground. Then he's gone, and the old men pick up again what he's thrown down. One by one the lenders of alms to men come back for their weights to score sin. It isn't humanitarian rescue efforts we're in. But if we didn't lend them gold, how would they go make right their pain? Never saw him again, that crank. Though they say he gets around. What can he have at the end of a talk when the plate comes through the crowd? Do his followers pay for the pleasure of hearing him growl? Or is it a dual carriageway system to take them to the one above? A way of proving they're all right without paying their fines? How do they know their sin is gone if nothing is burned on the ground? I keep counting my weights, though one of them never stopped rolling that afternoon. Maybe it's the weight of a soul. I get by with the weight for a sin. This one is about a much maligned Roman representative. And it is called Blessing Before Bread. People ask me about that man, just what he said. I've countersigned countless hangings, drawings and quarterings, countless limbs torn from limbs and heads. They want to know about that one. Crucifixion, a Roman killing, though not one authorized by Rome, local affair with international backing. I tell them I was present, the ranking legate, officer in charge, ensured the warrant was quite accurate. There was no way of stringing him up. He had trod on too many toes. There are thieves, rapists, bandits on the road. This one had opened his mouth too many times to be allowed. Did he say something about truth? If I had a sesterce for every prisoner wants their case reviewed. He said the sun hurt his bare head. I told him it would not be bare for long if he preferred. I only said that local tastes required you wash before breaking bread. As they were the perfect hosts, I would join them in what they said. They took him. He smiled like I was what he had known I'd be. I can barely remember, to tell you the truth, but his eyes have rarely left me. Since that noise began, only some days after that washing, I dried my hands, and suddenly there was this roaring, like many caverns under the waves, suddenly awake with foam. Nobody heard what I had said, but everyone knew I had said it. I was only what he'd asked, a sympathetic ear, before he got what he had wanted to be since the start, a man on a hill, all alone, with just the roar of the ocean in his grin, and nobody else up on that hill Nobody else to know what was going on in his quarrel with the way of things. This one is about the gardener at Gethsemane. The night after. Gethsemane. It's a nice garden, whatever they may tell you. No nicer bit of grass left in Jerusalem. I tend this bed. I plant that hedge. I clean up when the pilgrims leave their marjoram. It's not as nobody else quite cares, just nobody else does the vegetables. I was the one put lemon saplings there. It's me prunes the flowers in the vestibule. While he was there, I do not know, another casualty after an all-night do. You know the sort. They come and brew all manner of junk on the camp stove. Come morning, there's always one when I come to unlock the front door. Lost boy, a girl undone, an old man or crone in a tangle. This one was just a man. Too old to party, too young to be out of promise. A man with no offering in his hand, just muttering something about his lost students. Where have they gone, I said. I think they had a better offer. Bright boy like you, I said. Never. They know not to follow a falling star. I gave him a blanket. Couldn't help it. I swore long ago I wouldn't help another junkie. But when he looked up, his eyes were like an old movie. The frames run fast and snapped into the blazes, so all you could see was light. Like looking into the lens of a movie projector. Gold was pouring out, but there was not a sound left anywhere. The piano player had gone to ground. Nobody put this kid with no credit and nobody to pay for a cup of tea at the little stall outside the gate. I gave him 2 sugars and a slice of toast. He said, if I gave up the day job? I said, what can I do except dig ground? He looked so tired. I said I would think about it. He thanked me. The police came. I still have no idea what the charge was. He held his hands out like a lamb for the plastic handcuffs. He looked at me as they led him away. I mouthed, I'll try. No promises. They never lit a fire again in that pit. I've no idea what these kids think. Savages. Planted perennials there the other day. If he comes back, he'll know I did my bit. There's not a day goes by that I don't think about what he said. When I give up, I'll go search for a bit. Something you can put between 2 beds that lasts more than till daylight. Doesn't go up with the first frost. Something you can't cut with calipers. This one goes back to the Gospels, and it's about Caiaphas, the high priest. There's very little about him in the Jewish traditions. Yosef ben Caiaphas. Nothing much. I have to rely on the Gospel account of him, which is pretty cursory. I imagined what the rabbinic perspective might have been, and I have given it to him. It might be a slight anachronism, but maybe a century. Caiaphas. I should probably say also that the high priest's main job is to atone for the sins of the Jewish people once a year on Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and go into the Holy of Holies with 12 stones on his breast representing the 12 tribes. Caiaphas. I do not know that I absolve sins anymore. The people come and cry, they offer rams. But when they go, do they feel justified by what I've done? When I come out, the holiest of holies, do they sing or repeat a song? Where does the sacrifice belong if the sinner doesn't know they're wrong? They want a character to disinter their new ways from old law. They want a minister to see Rome as a scourge, not banister we hold on to so as not to fall as we ascend to what used to be still. I am the link to what remains of what we know of what's His will. Take these entrails and we know nothing, just what one man says God told him on a windy hill. God tells me everything. God tells me every ram just what its sin is worth, what it relieves. Does that change anything? God cannot change the law. He just takes rams out of my hand, and if they do not feel the change, what then? What will this man do when they cry and call down Rome upon their heads? What will he do when the temple is not enough to keep them pure? Will he know every kidney, every stone? No. God knows. And He knows what I atone. I do not know that I absolve sins anymore. But this I know. God waits to be fed rams. And when they do not give me rams, I fear what God will eat, fear what they will do alone. When they no longer offer sheep to me to still the crying in their wall. I rue what they will feel when they find nobody can keep them sure. Only the blood they spill when they no longer bring their firstborn to my door. When will this madness end? Attend, for there is nothing but the law. And who will spill the blood? The animal is just a sinecure. We know who we are. Now bring me the breastplate of 12 stones, and take that one to where he can become one with his star.